Good morning, Grinders. Welcome to DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD. If you want to follow me there on Twitter, and normally on Mondays we'd have James McCool, right, the co-author with me of the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass you can find at theoryofdfs.com. But apparently, he's on vacation. Apparently, he was on a road trip, and he's in the middle of nowhere now. So we don't have him today. So it's no Mondays with McCool. It's just me. It's just me. It's me and the chat room on YouTube. Right? Give me those thumbs up. Give me the thummy thumbs. Right? I got the apple juice here. Right? Give me those thummy thumbs. Got a subscribe button if you're new here. Notification bell if you know when we go live. And we got Suki Singh, Hong Lawrence. We got all the regulars: Matt Mears, Jane Newman, Daniel Hutchins, and whatever. And yes, thank you and whatever. Right? Everyone's congratulating me on the biggest single contest win of my DFS career, and that was I've been doing on Fridays. You notice I've been doing these MMA little segments and being like, okay, this is what I'm looking for at MMA, right? Because I don't really do MMA content. I mean, and MMA is not even like the biggest sport that I play or anything. And I've said, here's where the edge is. It's just a matter of, can you realize it? If the chalk fails, this is what's going to win. And the week before, won the 555 for 15,000. The week before that, came in fourth in the large field with for $4,000. And then finally, this past Saturday, 13 fight card for UFC 265, came in first place. A three-way tie for first, but first was 200,000, second was 100,000. So $116,666.67. I won a total of 120,000 overall, with all the other lineups and all the other contests and everything else. So I did it. I did it. Right? It took me a while to finally realize my EV in MMA, because I knew I was building plus EV lineups. I knew I was. I mean, and just it's a matter of can the right chalk fail at the right time and get unique lineups. So most of my lineups, I had 94 entries into this large field contest. I had 34 uniques, and I had 50 under 10. So out of 94, because under 10 would have at least given me like 40,000 or something like that, because it's a bigger, 200,000 a first. I try to aim, under 5. That's what I aim for. If I get under 10 uniques, that's fine. Anything more than 10, I'd rather not have. Right? Yeah. Sometimes I end up with lineups that are duplicated 54 times. Yeah, sometimes it happens. I try to avoid it, but that's why in the beginning of a slate, I always look at that type of stuff and go, as long as I'm unique enough, I'm good. When I see that I barely made any unique lineups, and I have a lot of lineups that are over 10 uniques, that's it. But the slate hasn't even started. The first fight hasn't even started, and I'm already pissed, right? I did something wrong. So this finally happened. And someone said before in the chat, lifetime supply of apple juice, right? Hog Lawrence. Yes, I can buy all the apple juice I want. Right, I got the little ones, the little Mott's ones today. And Jerome Lewis says, how much for your MMA Excel model? I did a video. I recorded it yesterday. It's on the RotoGrinders YouTube channel. Okay, you'll see here how I won 117,000 playing MMA DFS. I did an entire video explaining everything. So it's 54 minutes long. Feel free to watch that. I mean, I literally, you could build this exact Excel spreadsheet pretty much. The only thing you don't know the formula for the rating. But the concepts. I mean, this is what I show on the pregame show. Okay, everything involving this spreadsheet is everything involving game theory of DFS play in any sport, right? MMA is just easier because it's like the betting lines are so obvious, and that's pretty much all you need to know. Like you don't need to project people for like how much they're going to score, like in a fight, as much as you do in basketball or football or baseball. And obviously those are team sports. So there's more correlation in lineups and more one guy affects this guy type of stuff. MMA is just 13 fights. One guy fights another guy, or one woman fights another woman. And typically stacks don't win first place in large field GPP. So for the most part, you're not playing guys against each other. And then build unique lineups and build plus EV lineups. And I just use this as a guideline of which fighters are more unique and more plus EV than others based on the betting lines versus their ownership. And then that's it. And then you build lineups. It's not really that complicated, but this is exactly what I show you every weekday here for baseball or football or basketball. We talk about, what's the best stack of the day? Well, it's not about who's going to score the most points. It's what's the probability of them scoring the most points versus how much they're going to be owned by the field. So you're looking to exploit what everyone else is doing, right? So the biggest concern to you is not predicting what's going to happen. It's predicting what other people are going to do. So that's all of how I play MMA. Most of these fighters, unless they were on a slate previously, I don't even know what they look like. I mean, yeah, I knew Don, I knew Lewis, Bobby Green even. I mean, I've seen Jose Aldo. He's been fighting for long enough. But some of these, like Menefield, I remember from a card. But like most of these, I have no idea. No clue what they look like. Right? No clue whatsoever. I mean, other than the picture that's on the Draftkings screen. I don't watch any of their fights. I have no clue. I'll listen to the MMA podcast here on RotoGrinders for premium members and read the stuff and go, okay, well, they're more of a wrestler type and they're more of this type and they won this last fight. Just as background information. But other than that, it's just like, nope, but whatever the numbers say, that's what I'm going to do. Right. That's what I'm going to do. And how large DFS, what's the quickest way to determine uniques? You could do that in Excel, or you could, there's actually like on GitHub, there's a little program. There's also a site for if you play MMA DFS, DFS Sweat, DFS, where is it? DFS Sweat. Let's see if this loads. Like it'll show you, you could look at all lineups, like it'll show you all the lineups in here. Go to pros. So you see here, Blender HD 34 uniques. So if you just want to know how many uniques you have, like, and you play MMA, like you could find that on dfssweat.com, where you could do it in Excel. You could just see like how many do you have under 10? You use an array and the unique functionality of Excel to count the rows. So you're basically counting the 6 rows. And you're going, which of these are you? How many of these are there for this person, right? For this user in the username column, right? So it's an Excel thing you could do. It's not that complicated. But if you want to just see uniques in MMA, dfssweat.com could just simply just show you that easily. If you just want to know that number. But yeah, so everything is in that video. The only thing that I added, if you saw from Friday, is that to get like I had these ratings, so which takes all this information and gives me like a plus minus EV type of thing. It's not technically, it's not $1.80. It's just whatever. It just comparatively rates the fighters to one another, and that's based on an projected ownership average. But now that I know what the ownership is. Like once it locks, I can now put that in and recalculate and whatever this rating would be. Had I known it was 46%. Had I known it was this, right? Because I have like some people like Derek Lewis. I calculated his rating at low 0.71 at 19% ownership. He ended up coming in at 26% ownership, which means his rating was even worse, right? So I already didn't have much of O'Day Osborne and Derek Lewis, but based on what their actual ownership, because I thought those guys were bad plays at 21 and 19% owned. They were 28 and 26% owned. So knowing that, I would have possibly had even less of them, right? And I didn't. It's not like I had much of O'Day Osborne, but Derek Lewis, I think I had. Derek Lewis, I had 14%. I may have only stuck him in this 6% range. Had I known he would be even more owned than that. So I look at all of this, and it turns out that Manel Kopp, who I had he was my most exposed fighter because he was the highest rated fighter in my model. He was even less owned than 23%. It was 19%, which made him even better. By far, more so than some of these other. Menafield and Munoz actually went down. They were more owned. Like Munoz, I had average owned at 34%. He came in at 47%, which didn't make him like a bad play, but didn't make him anywhere near as good at 34% owned. So if I take a look at my, like Munoz, 47%, I probably would have had something more like 30. Had I known he would be that owned. So I just added this little section, kind of a teaching tool type of section. So I could go in the beginning of a slate before it starts and go, okay, what's the ownership of all these guys? And then see and go, okay, had I known this, did I have the right types of lineups? And for the most part, other than Luque, who happened to be in my winning lineup, Luque was like the worst play out of all of the favorites on this slate. I didn't even have much of him to begin with. I had him 11%. He ended up coming in the winning lineup that I won with. But had I known he was even worse than I had, because he was going to be even more owned, I may have only had Luque in like 6% of the lineups. Maybe the lineup that I won with wouldn't have gotten made. Maybe. So sometimes you get, I was good. I was going on the right side with like Kopp and Gatto. But Luque, I end up with only 6% Luque instead of 11%. And this lineup may not have existed. So sometimes you got to get lucky. Sometimes you got to get a little bit lucky. Right? Making 94 lineups and hopefully make the right one. But if you see here, this lineup, it's missing the top 4 owned fighters. All did not make the optimal lineup. So you have here all these 46, 46, 47, 34. Munoz ended up at 37% owned. All the top 4 owned fighters did not score enough. Like, they didn't do badly, right? Munoz didn't do badly. Menafield only got 73. Gane got 89. And Munoz lost, so he only got like maybe 30. But the fighters that I had higher ended up scoring 100 plus. Gatto 100 plus, Kopp 100 plus, Penne 100 plus. Right, taking a look at the lineup. So like they just based on pricing, Luque was 8,500 and outscored Munoz and Gane for cheaper. So he was able to fit in this lineup that spent all $50K worth of salary. So I spent $50K worth of salary and still was only duped two other times. It was a 3 dupe. So it's not a matter of, do you leave a lot of salary off the table? Always. Like, well, it depends on the lineup. In a lineup where you're fading the 4 highest owned fighters, you spend $50K. I mean, it's not going to be used that much. But if this had, 2 high owned 40+% fighters, then that's a lineup that you spend 49.2, 48.8, right? Just to avoid heavy duplication. So these are all the concepts that I taught. There's nothing new. There's nothing proprietary. There's nothing. Just using game theory to build lineups that are plus EV, and then you hope to survive long enough for the bigs. Right? If you look at my roto tracker right now, like now I'm having a very good year, right? Right. I went from, okay, I'm going up. I'm up to 31,000. I go in a downswing in the beginning of baseball season, come up a little, come up a bunch, 36,000, and now bing, 150,000. So this is what my year looks like. And if you take a look at my if I just go to my MMA graph, and this is my lifetime, right? So now I'm over a $500,000 lifetime in just under 6 years. So you see it, but that's what you're doing. You're just like, can I go up? I'm going to go down, 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 bing, down, 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 bing, down, 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 bing, down, 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 woo, really big, right? So you don't want to go broke in the time. You want to tread water. You want to win a little, lose a little, win a little, lose a little. Try to get a tread line a little bit up and survive long enough. Play plus TV lineups and realize your expected value. So, but if you take a look at MMA, for instance, we just do MMA. I play 28 slates total because I started last year during COVID. Then I didn't play a bunch in January, in the winter or whatever, because NBA. Look, I lost all this in MMA, right? Started, last June, just learning pretty much. Down, 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 down. Look, down 7,300, down 7,500, down 9,600, down 10,004, down 11,003, down 12,000, right? And then up a little. Okay, got up, nice $2,500 hit up here. Okay, but still not enough, right? You have to come in first in these contests, right? You have to come in really high. And you want to have it so you're not duplicated 8 million times and you're only getting $8,000 or something, right? So I'm up here. Okay. I tread water. Then I'm down, 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 down to minus 16,000, minus 17,000. And then I get up. Oh, that's a $4,000 win, but it's still not enough. I need to survive. I need to get the big bink. And you're just playing plus EV lineups and just waiting for the opportunity, right? You jumped in, treading water, down, up, down, 100, up, here's 2,500. So it's like, okay, I'm getting a little bit of my money back, but I'm surviving in order to win that big bink. And then you go, and then I go up a little, win 800. Then obviously this is the week before I won 15,000 in the 555. And then the next week, 116,000. Then this is what a GPP player's graph looks like. It's a very small sample size of 28 slates. But if we extend it out, if we look at category, let's go by categories. Should be, they just added a bunch of stuff. Okay, GPP. If I look at my GPP overall, that's what it's going to look like. From a long, obviously I could zoom out and see that type of thing, right? Down, 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 down. Look at down, down, lose, big bink, down, big bink, down, 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 big bink. Little here, little. That should look like steps, right? Looks like little slopes and then big steps, hopefully big steps. So in 20, obviously in 28 slates, this is over the course of, playing every day, playing baseball, basketball, football, everything. MMA only happens once a week, right? And they have weeks off. Next week we have off. So in the course of 28 slates, so over 100 slates, it's going to look like they did 116,000, and I'm going to start coming down. I'm going to go 116,000, lose 1,000, lose 1,000, lose 1,000, lose 1,000, and hopefully, big spike, 50,000, 60,000. That's what I play for. The large field GPPs to do something like that. So that's what it's supposed to look like. So when people say it's like, oh, I'm playing these large field GPPs and I'm losing 80, 90% of the time. It's like, yeah, that's what you should be losing. That's what I'm not even cashing most of my luck. Yeah, that's what it should be. That's in order to aim for first, that's what you need to do. And if you're not aiming for first in these contests, in these large field, 5,294 entries on a 13 fight card, when there's tons of lineups that are being duplicated, you got to aim for first with as little duplication as possible. We played this out. If you kept on playing slates and just started playing chalky type lineups and I don't care if I get duplicated 180 times, you're not going to win enough money. You're going to, after you go 5 years doing that, you're like, well, it feels like I win more often than not. And yet why am I down 10 grand? Why am I down 20 grand? Yeah, you just bled your money away. Right, because you never had any of those big paydays, right? Because you didn't aim for them, and you realize that with the rake at 15% and duplicate, you have the winning lineup, but you're tied 180 ways. It doesn't matter. Oh yeah, for that slate, it's like, oh yeah, well I don't mind just getting $7,200 when first place was supposed to be 100,000. to first alone. And you're like, well, I did that 3 times, right? It's like I came in first place 3 times when it was tied 120, 180 ways or whatever it was. But you're still paying the same amount of money. You're still paying $20 an entry, $25 an entry, $18 an entry, whatever it is, $15. I'm paying $25 an entry for this contest, yet most of my lineups have a shot at winning 6 figures. Your lineups only have a shot at winning like $8,000, $12,000. So it's like over the course of time, like I'm going to end up making more money than you, even though I'm going to lose like 90% of the time. Right? That's the point. That is what DFS GPP play is. Daniel Hutchins says it's right. Sounds like MMA is a lot like Showdown. I've compared that a lot. Said playing MMA is almost simpler, but it's very similar mentality as NFL Showdown. But there's no captain spot. They do have a TV slate. That it's not the main slate, that they have a captain spot for the TV cut. Like it's an 8 fights, like the last after the prelims, but it's a smaller prize pools. But for the main slate, it's just you're just picking 6 fighters. There's no multipliers or nothing. So you have to think much more like NFL Showdown. Other than the fact there's no positions and no captain mode, but you're thinking of the duplication factor matters a lot, right? Trying to win first solo or with very few duplication. So if you're good at NFL Showdown, if you're good at NBA, the short, slow showdown type of stuff, you could be perfectly fine in MMA, and especially with all these results being very linear. One fight there's no correlation between fights, right? Well, if this guy wins this fight, then this woman wins this fight. Like, no, you don't have to worry about that. So I just wanted to show that. And we have G-Man Boy 416. Thank you very much. This guy is legit. Started watching and listening to all his content, and I'm making the most money I've ever made in DFS. And I've been playing since the Draft Street days. Oh yeah, so you've been playing longer than I have, right? I didn't start playing until October 2015. So there you go. And Brian C asked about the profit trend. That's RotoTracker. So if you go to rototracker.com, yeah, I mean, there's a limit to how you could use it for free. I mean, but I pay for it. I write it off as an expense. But I update that, once a week, once every 2 weeks or whatever. A lot of sharp players only update it when they win a big tournament. They just win big. But me, I like analyzing my RotoTracker at least twice a month. Depends on what I'm playing, right? Sometimes if I'm playing a lot of head-to-heads in a sport or something, maybe I want to make sure I'm playing the right people, right? Who I'm doing well against, who I'm not doing well against, stuff like that. But yeah, RotoTracker to me, like that's the only way to track everything. It's never going to lie to you, right? You think you've been playing DFS for 3-4 years, and you're like, oh yeah, I think I'm a profitable player, and you put it in, you're down $37,000. Like it's not going to lie to you, right? You may think one thing, oh, I'm great in these games, and you find out that you're not. And actually, I'm doing well in this, and you didn't even realize it, right? Like, to me, that's the most important thing, right? Who you're playing against, what you're playing, contest selection, right? You're building the same lineups, but you can win more money. So just do that. Daniel Hutchins says in Showdown, it's almost like you have 3 contests in one. Either a huge prize for first, a medium prize for first, or steak knives. In the last case, the MMEers literally cannot win. That's correct, right? You play 150 lineups, and the winning lineup is a chalk like dupe train. Like basically the entire contest has become negative EV. Like the entire thing, because it's a 150 way tie for first, and the second best lineup is still 151st place for like what? For 4x maybe or something like that. So yes, but that's why you don't play for those, right? I know on the slates where those chalk dupe trains hit, I'm never going to have that lineup, like unless it's by accident. So that's going to be a losing slate. My goal is to win the low scoring slates where the chalk fails, where the dupe trains are done, and have as many non-duplicated lineups or less duplicated lineups as possible. It's DFS 101 type of stuff. It's expected value 101. It's like on a slate where if you did a simulation, I'm assuming, Daniel, if you ran out the simulation of the contest, and any time a lineup that with more than 20, maybe 20, it really depends on how much the first and what the cost of the contest. But I think maybe 30, definitely 50. But if you do, let's say you do 50, like any lineup that's duplicated 50 or more times, run the simulation of that being the winning lineup, and then what the lineups look like, and then run that contest 10,000 times. Everyone's unprofitable. Everyone becomes unprofitable. So in a contest, even like your 51st lineup, in the 52nd line, like it's impossible to be profitable. So on slates where that happens, there's no lineup that if you played it, if we ran the slate over and over again, and that happens, there's no lineup that's long-term profitable. So because that's the case, then what's the point of making lineups for that win condition? You might as well make 10 of those lineups than 150 of any other lineup. Because then if those lineups win, it makes all of your other lineups unprofitable. It makes all of your lineups unprofitable. If you understand what I'm saying. Let's see. Go through the YouTube chat. Yeah, we got a short slate tonight, right? At 6:10. Make sure you know it's an early on DraftKings. It's a 4-game slate on FanDuel at 7-ish or whatever, and 6:10 on DraftKings. So I know people will be like, oh, it's 6:30, and there's my CSV. Oh, I forgot. So remember, 6:10 Eastern on DraftKings. But feel free to post in the YouTube chat any questions. As always, here to answer your strategy questions. Dario Rosenstock says, I can see from your Excel sheet that both main event guys were overowned. Does the larger slate size also contribute to playing more lineups without the main event? Dario Rosenstock also says, because even in a decision, those guys can put up more points, but the larger the slate, the more chances there are for 6 other fighters to put up bigger scores. So yes, that is true, but it's also dependent on the actual fighters. Like this was a 13-fight card, so you're right. On a 10-fight card, on a smaller card, there's smaller chances, right, of getting 6 finishes, right? Because typically a round 1 finish and inside the distance, second round finish leads to a 90, 100 plus point score. If it's a 15-fight card and there's only one main event 5-rounder, there's 14 other 3-round fights that you could find 6 people that outscore the main event winner, right? Because there's more opportunities too. Very similar to baseball, right? Well, you stack when there's a 15-game slate because there's the chances of one of those teams paying off a 5-man stack is much more likely because there's 30 teams on the slate rather than 10 teams on the slate. So it's very similar to that. But it also depends on the actual what the fighters are. This is a heavyweight fight. Okay? And it's reflected in the projection. That's why I include the projection in here. So while Gane has plus 100 inside the distance, still only 350 in the first round. So he has a higher inside the distance odds because it is a 5-round fight. But his round 1 odds in comparison to Menefield, Munoz, Kopp, right? Even some like 350 and 450 aren't even that dramatically different. 18% versus 22%, right? The reason his inside the distance is high is 100, which is still not one of the high, is still not the third, only the third highest on the slate, is because he has 5 rounds to get that finish. But it's not expected for him to get it in the first round in comparison to some other fighters. And Derek Lewis, on the other hand, he projects so low because if he doesn't get a finish, he doesn't score well. Derek Lewis will never score well in a decision because he only throws 1 punch at a time. He throws 2 punches a round. Right? And especially Gane's average projection here was 89. A lot of times, on the Strickland fight, this projection would have been 110. Right? He would have projected better. So let's say he was a better fighter for scoring. I'll put that in right now. Instead of 89 as the average projection, let's just say, just to skew this completely, like 200 to make his average projection 129. Well, now he rates so much better because, yeah, while his inside the distance in round one isn't as good as some other fighters, he makes it up in a decision that he could score a lot of points. Right? So that's what I'm looking at. What was the number over here? What was the number? 89? 89? It was 89 total. So what? 85, 83, 82, 81. I don't remember what. Okay, that's good enough. I mean, I'm going to change all this anyway. Who cares about this information now? So that all about like what a main. The reason why the main event tends to get rostered more and owned is because you have 5 rounds to score points rather than 3. But that doesn't mean anything. Like, it's more correlative that a first round finish, second round finish is more correlative to a 100-point score than a decision win, no matter how long it goes. So yeah, there are certain fighters like volume strikers and grapplers that their projection based in my model, it'll account for it. The weight of this projection will help them. Then we could also see here, like Chiesa, right? He's more of a wrestler, so his projection is higher than some of these people, right? We have Casey Kenny a little bit higher here, right? So that's made up for in this average projection. That if they score well, even in a decision, but your goal in large field GPPs, I'm aiming for 100 plus points. Like, that's what I'm aiming for. And yes, there are certain fighters that could score 100 plus points in a 3-round decision. And when you have 5 rounds to do it and you could score a takedown in every round, get ground and pound and everything, yeah, your projection will end up being higher. So it'll account for that in this rating. But for the most part, I'm looking for, give me 6 fighters that win in the first round. Like, if I optimize just for that, that's a 600-point score, six fighters, that's going to win. It doesn't matter if they're in the main event, and it doesn't matter what the prices are. If you hear, I have not mentioned anything about, well, did I get value out of a fighter? I don't care about getting value. I need the nut lineup. I'm playing large field, not with non-duplicated lineups. I don't care that Jose Aldo made value. Is he in the optimal lineup? No. So he might as well have scored 0. It doesn't matter to me, right? It's like, oh, okay, Miles John scored like, I think 89 points at 8,900, 86 points. And it's like, well, I mean, he could end up in the optimal at that score. He would need like a lot of these people to fail. But for the most part, 86 points ain't going to cut it. Regardless of the price. It doesn't even matter what the price is. You're like, well, at 8,900, that's if I get 86 points from one of these guys down here, yes, it's more likely they'll be in the optimal if the high price guys also put up 100 plus points. But we've seen cards where some 7K fighter wins with 85, and you're like, how is he not in the optimal? He's the lowest price fighter, and he got 85. He could fit into every lineup. And then it's a 14 fight card, and there's 8 finishes. So there may be 7 fighters with 100 plus point scores. And that low price guy with 85 still not and doesn't end up in the nut lineup. Even though at the beginning of the night you're like, oh, how does he not end up in the nut? Oh, there you go. Other people scored 100 plus with first round finishes. There you go. And then sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes you have a card that it's 12 fights and it's 10 decisions. And the winning score is like 517 or something. I mean, like something like that. Okay. But I'm still going to optimize and prioritize first round inside the distance finishes. That's going to be the highest weight for me. And that's why Gane versus Lewis the betting lines were not good for a first round knockout of either fighter compared to some other fights on the slate. Or at least relatively, I mean, compared to their ownership. Right? We look at Kopp. Kopp had a 25% chance of winning the first round, and Gane had 22%, and Lewis had 11%. Kopp was 19% owned. Gatto was 425, which is not that much different than Gone, right? 22 versus 19, but she's 18% owned. Gone was 46% owned because he's in the main event. So that's all you're taking advantage of. I didn't predict what's going to happen. I didn't predict what happens at all. I just like, okay, here are the betting lines. I'm assuming the betting lines are efficient. And what is the field going to do? And who should I be playing more than others? Because based on that expected value, Kopp is way under-owned. So I'm going to play more of him. He's worth more. That's it. And if he ends up with a first-round knockout like he did, I'm going to have a very profitable day. And if he ends up getting beat, then half my lineups are dead. Right? But it doesn't, it's still plus EV regardless. It's like betting on a coin flip and getting 3-1 odds. It's like, I'm going to call heads and it comes up tails. So did I do anything wrong? No, I'm getting a 3-1 bet on even money probability. So predicting the outcome to me is not, who cares? As long as I'm able to make 3-1 bets on coin flips every day, I'll keep on saying heads or tails. It doesn't, I'll pick whatever I want. That's the core of what DFS is. Let's see. Best beat Boz, Blender personal question. How often do you pay yourself from your winnings? Well, I all my play is under my S corporation. So like my S corporation pays me a salary every quarter. So it's a way to funnel money and then take expenses of everything that I have. Talk to a tax professional. If you're playing professionally as your primary source of income, like you at least get an LLC and then convert it over to an S corporation. And you could, just for tax purposes. I have a bankroll. It's like I don't have to pay myself. Like if a bill is due, I just pay the bill. Let's see. Michael Dompier, MLB question. Okay, we'll go over to MLB finally. Probably stupid question. You might have no insight on. Okay, well, let's see. Let's see if I do. Cardi is on vacation. Any concerns at all about the bat projections are all good. Now, when he's on vacation, it doesn't mean he doesn't have his laptop with him. He's updating stuff. Most of the stuff is automated with the bat. Most of the stuff with most models is automated. The only thing that Cardi has to do is basically run the program and check on if there's pitch count type of things, pinch hit risk, things like the intangibles, like the stuff. Well, this guy may, the projected starter. This guy may go somewhere between 50 to 65 pitches. Well, if it never gets mentioned, maybe it gets projected for 87 pitches because no one knows, right? So that type of stuff, it's still being done. There's not much else to do. The model is saying he may not be back testing stuff and tweaking stuff in the back end to make it long-term as accurate as possible. But as far as the day-to-day stuff, it works, right? It's not like Cardi's working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week normally. Kevin TG, might be a dumb question, but how do you know when you are making positive EV lineups? Well, you could simulate stuff. If you don't know how to do sims, there's another way of doing it. A good blunt way of knowing if you're building plus EV lineups is over a long period. In RotoTracker, there's this thing called finishing position. Okay, because there's a lot of variance in DFS. Your goal is to put yourself in the position to get lucky towards the top. Because once you get into the top 100, that's definitely the top 10. First place is X score. Fifth place is 4 points lower than that. That's in baseball, that's like a run and a hit, a single RBI. That's it. The difference between 100,000 and 5,000, right? You're in 10th place, and you have a pitcher pitching that's in the third inning. You're like, I'm down. I'm going to win this, and then they get blown up. Like if that pitcher just pitched 2 scoreless innings, you would have won 100,000. But because he didn't, you're now down in 14th place. Like those small margins, but just getting lineups up there. That's your goal. So I gauge it outside of simulating the contests is you look at your 1% buckets in GPP. So you want to get more than your fair share in the top 1% of GPP contests. So here's my finishing position graph for GPPs over my lifetime. This is almost just under 6 years. So you want the top 1%. In the top, my finishing position for 1%, I'm getting 1.8% of my lineups in. So almost twice as many more of the fair share of lineups. Top in the 2% percentile, I have 1.6%. So you want to see this red line? You want to see, especially where all the, because the difference of coming in like, oh, I came in 10, the 9% percentile. These payouts and GPPs don't matter. Top 1% matters. Top 0.1% matters. So typically, if you're getting more than 1% in the top 1%, you're breaking even. Typically like 1.2%, because remember the rake is like 15%. So you kind of have to get a finishing position of like 1.2% or more to be profitable. I mean, this is all generalities. So the higher you're getting them in, the better, the higher EV lineups that you're building. Obviously, this is over a long-term period. Can't judge this over the course of a week, right? This is like over the course of seasons, months, years. So you could see that if, for instance, you're getting, I've seen some graphs this season from people in the RotoGrinders Discord, people with a 1% finishing rate in MLB of 2.4%. Like they're getting 2.4% in the top 1%, and they're losing money, right? And they're actually down money on the season. That's a sign that you're unlucky. You're playing well, and variance is just not going your way because you're placing so many hot, 2.4% of your lineups high. It's just that they're coming in 16th place. You're coming in 22nd place. You're coming in 12th place. Like you just didn't get that one, the last at bat RBI double to get up into the good spots often enough. Now, on the other end, if you look at your finishing position graph, and let's say you're finishing only 0.8% of lineups in the top 1% over a big sample size. Let's say you won $100,000. You won one of the GPPs, and you're actually up. You're like, oh, I've been playing for 2 years, and I'm up a total of $70,000 with a $100,000 win in there. And you look, and then you've placed only 0.8% of lineups in the top 1%. Well, that means you're actually not playing well. You got lucky to win that $100,000. Actually, you're probably an unprofitable player in the long term. So that's a way to show that you got lucky to have that. But in a perfect world, you place X amount of lineups towards the top, you'll eventually pick something, right? How often you should be? I don't know. This year, I've been a little bit unlucky, especially in MLB. I've been placing a lot more lineups in the top 1%. I got a second place, but I got a lot of 15s and 12s and 8s and stuff in that range. And the payout structure is so top heavy that the difference from 8th to 4th is even dramatic. But this is a good way to judge if you don't have access to some type of simulation methodology, where you could basically take your projections and the actual ownership, very, very similar concept to this, but you're actually running all the lineups you're basically running a simulation of all of the lineups in the contest over and over again. And you do that 10,000, 100,000, however many times you want. Then you see what's the average profitability of those lineups based on your projections. I mean, you could do that regardless of top 1% or anything like that. And that's probably a more accurate way to judge if you're building plus EV lineups. But a blunt way is just this. If I could tell you, if you're placing enough lineups in the top 1%, luck will come your way one of these days, right? You'll get that home run. You're down 10 points, or you're up and you're holding, or whatever. Like, you'll get there. If this graph Like if you put in your finishing positions into GPP, there's going to be 3 main types of graphs. This type of graph, this is what a sharp player graph's going to look like. Heavy leaning towards the top over here and not much down here because there's so many dead lineups that it's almost impossible to come in last place. You'll see a graph that it's flat. So if your graph is more flat, like maybe there's little peaks over here, but it's more just like you're placing your fair share in almost every percentile. Like that's like a break-even player. That's like just you're losing to the rake. Like you're placing your right frequencies across the board, but you're just bleeding money away. And then you have the same type of thing bleeding money away, the bell curve. If you have a lot of spikes, like here in like the 16 to 28 range, like in this mid-range over here, so it goes from a low, it goes up like this, and then down and slopes down. So you're getting a lot of lineups in this like meaty, 15 to 40% range. That means you're probably playing lineups that are way too choppy. You're playing high projected lineups that min cash more often, but your top 1% perspective is like low. Like these percentiles come in very low, but you have very little down here also. So that's why it's like all of these results are kind of like in this range, and you're down here and you're kind of down over there. That just means that you're playing a lot of cash like lineups. You're playing a lot of double up type lineups. You're focusing way too much on projection, right? And building the best plays than building lineups that have leverage to win first place. And in the same rate of that flat type of finishing position graph, you're probably bleeding the same amount of money, right? You're probably losing to the rake. You're probably down 15, 20% lifetime in that sport doing that. So this is a much better way of judging. Am I building good lineups? Am I building good lineups and getting unlucky? Am I building bad lineups and getting lucky? And you could also do this type of thing probably in Excel or R or something. But obviously, if you have RotoTracker, like it does it for me there. Easy peasy. Go to the YouTube chat a little bit. James Martini, yes, this site is RotoTrack. RotoGrinders used to have a bankroll optimizer tracker thing or whatever. That wasn't as advanced as this, but still pretty good. But that was discontinued. Do you need all of this? No, not necessarily. But at the level that I play at, yes, I have no problem. It's like $15 a month, and you pay up front for the whole year. It's like whatever. And if you have only if you're a single entry type of player, so you don't play that many contests, that many entries, I think it's like free up to like 25,000 entries in your CSV file. My CSV file has millions of entries, so it'll only count the first 25,000. If you're playing serious, you should be doing something like this if you're playing seriously. Even if that I always view it from a standpoint, and I've said it before, I could probably build something in Excel that is decent. And maybe not nowhere near as good as RotoTracker, but give me the stuff that I need. Right? Maybe make this type of graph in Excel. You know how long it would take me to do that? I'm not bad in Excel, but I'm not good at Excel. Some of these functionalities, I don't know. I would have to look up to see how exactly I would do this. So how long is that going to take me? Hours, if not days, if not weeks? Why not pay the $15? And it's done for me. And there you go. How much is your time worth? So that's how I view it as. If you're just tracking it, you should be tracking your bankroll regardless what you're doing well. And even if you'd let some people log it in their own Excel file. They go, okay, I won this today and won that today, whatever. How much time does that take? So add up all that time. Is it worth pay $15? There you go. If you're playing seriously. If you're not playing seriously, don't worry about it. If you're not playing seriously, you don't have to do anything that I do. Right? You don't have to listen to me at all. Play whoever you want and have fun and whatever. Who cares? I base the show around people that want to play DFS seriously for a profit. Just like I do. Okay. Today's slate, I think we have to worry about the Cubs game. I was on the Morning Grind podcast, so if you want to download that, I'm on everything today, right? Uh, not crunch time later today. But the Morning Grind podcast, it's a 5-game slate on DraftKings, 4-game slate on FanDuel. I mentioned that there's potential wind blowing out in Wrigley, but according to Roth, he thinks this game's in trouble of not playing. Major storms and everything. So that may take a Peralta out of the equation. That may take the whole game out of the equation, which now, even on DK, turns it into a 4-game slate, which takes Peralta out. So we're going to see a lot of Musgrove plus Castillo, Giolito, Tyon, basically the 4, favored pitchers in these games. And the Yankees are going to be super chalk. I can't see how they're not chalk. But if we take a look at the bat stack projections, this is the wind is going to help the Brewers. So if the Cubs game does play, I definitely like the Brewers. Look at the difference in the ceiling projection. 10 points higher than the White Sox. But the Yankees are going to be chalky, and I prefer the White Sox. I prefer the Royals against Tyon. And I only say the White Sox, okay? White Sox are one of these teams, especially in the bat, that the baselines of the White Sox players, the bat is lower on than most models. Okay, so understand that the prior of that lineup is much lower than other models. So whenever I see the White Sox project well as one of the top ceiling plays in the bat, I have to take notice. There's certain teams, the Oakland A's tends to be lower projected in the bat, just because they Cardi goes a longer sample size and a different way of determining the players' just baseline skill. So the Yankees typically get a little bit of a hit. The A's, the Astros, the Blue Jays, and those are pretty good teams. And it's not like they never project badly, but they typically are under projected in comparison to other models. So those are the types of teams when I see, the White Sox have one of the top ceiling projections. Typically the bet doesn't like the White Sox, so that I have to give it an extra little thing in my mind, right? The Marlins are putting out lineups that are Lewis Brinson is batting cleanup. Okay, Musgrove is going to be. Based on these projections, he's going to have to be chalk. He's in the bat right now. He's the highest raw projected pitcher by 5 points over Peralta, over Giolito by 8 points, over Castillo by nearly 8.5 points, and he's 8,500. So on FanDuel, he's going to be chalk. If you go by this, look at the point per dollar versus everyone else. So obviously on a short slate, especially if the Cubs game gets, rained out, postponed, the leverage play is to play the Marlins. But the Marlins are so bad. I keep on going back to the same screen. I can't find all my screens. This Marlins team, 2.82 implied run total. Lewis Brinson batting cleanup. It's cheap. Sure, it's cheap. But that would be the leverage. It's not like we haven't seen Musgrove get blown up before. But I think, like I said on the Morning Grind podcast, my main goal on smaller slates is to find the easiest leverage possible. So whoever one of these pitchers is going to be owned, I want to stack against. If Tyon's going to get 20+% ownership, I want to play the Royals. If Giolito is going to get 20+% ownership, fine. It's just the teams that are up against Henkes and Mills and Burrow, those are the better teams, right? Because they have the higher implied run total. But there's only so many lineups that you can make. There's only 5 games, possibly only 4 games on the slate. So I'd rather play, just like I said, it goes back full circle to what I was talking about with the MMA. It's not about predicting who's going to win. It's about what is the ownership efficient. It's easier for me, just like in MMA. It was easier for me to be under on the highest owned fighters and build lineups without main event guys in it, right? And take shots at $8,800 and $9,000 fighters that were going to be under 20% owned when they should have been over 30% owned. So that's what I'm doing here in baseball also. What's the easiest path to first place on a low-scoring slate? Well, if the Yankees are going to be chalk, maybe I play Carlos Hernandez against them and then stack against Castillo. And I play the Indians. Like, is that the most likely thing to happen? No. It's very improbable. But the probability of it happening is X, and the ownership of that type of lineup is going to be lower than it. So it has more of a likelihood of happening than what they will be owned at, even though they're improbable outcomes. If I wanted the most probable outcomes, I'd probably play the Yankees plus the Reds, Musgrove and Castillo, find some punt one-off play a 4-3-1 type lineup. It's like, dude, that's like the chalk lineup. It's going to be everyone's in your lineup. It's going to be 15, 20%, 30%, 35% owned. How are you winning a first place in a GPP with that? You need everything to go perfectly, and then it's still possible you duplicate it 3 times. 4 times, 5 times, and you still need everything to go perfectly, and your score is going to be 230. That's the most probable, but your goal in DFS is to not worry about what's most probable. The only, you wouldn't mind those lineups if they were still lower owned than they should be, right? You tell me that type of lineup is still only going to be 3% owned, then I play a ton of them. Sure. If all those guys don't, if the Yankees come in at 1% owned when they should be 30%, give me all the Yankees. So, I mean, that's the only consideration for me. They have the highest implied run total. They're going to be they have enough cheap bats to make a stack. They're going to be the chalk. What's their efficient ownership? If they're chalky and still enough people own other teams and the Yankees come in at, let's say the stack comes in at 18%, that may be under owned. It may be the high 18%, maybe the highest owned, but maybe they should be 24. That means I want to play the Yankees. But let's say they're 36% owned, but they should be 24. So they're way over owned. So that means I want to play less of the Yankees. So if you understand that, especially if you're new here, I know I repeat myself on these shows seemingly every day with these concepts, that it's not about predicting whether or not the Yankees are going to do well. Right? We have projections. We could cement some type of probability there. You go, are the Yankees going to be the top stack more or less than their ownership? If it's going to be less than their ownership, be more inclined to not play them. If it's going to be if it's going to be less than their ownership, then be more inclined to play them. I mean, but you're not predicting what's going to happen. So obviously they're going to project well. They have the highest implied total. So if you're playing cash games where you don't have to worry about coming in first place, sure, play all the Yankees you want. Go ahead. Let's see. Michael Dompier says the Cubs versus Brewers is a division game. They aren't waiting to play until 10 p.m. Yeah, you're right. They'll just play. They play enough times together that they could reschedule that. Yeah, well, we'll probably know that at some point today. And Dwayne Bones says I'm going to stack Cleveland and Kansas City. Funny you should say that, Dwayne. Currently, I have a Cleveland plus Cincinnati 5-3 lineup in my $250 ball 4 entry. Right? You're mentioning the exact. You're mentioning a lineup that I'm looking to play. Right? Cleveland and Kansas City as of right now. But I mean, anything change, right? Let's see what happens with this game. Let's see what happens. I mean, do we have anything else? Right? He said is the Reds game. What's the weather? A few spotty showers. The Reds Indians. Okay, so whatever. Solid hitting weather. So maybe Castillo has looked good, right? But this could be the day that he blows up, right? He blows up for one start and comes back and has 3 good starts. You never know what's going to happen. What's the probability of it happening? How much is it going to be owned? So the more that you play players and teams and lineups that have a better shot at winning than what they're owned, you're gonna be profitable over the long term. What's going to happen today? I don't know. So you keep on doing that day after day after day after day after day, just like I did in MMA. I didn't change my process. I refined it a little. I made more plus EV lineups rather than have some stragglers that were duplicated 70 times. But the entire time, just building lineups that have high win equity and just waiting for me to realize my EV. And First slate, no. Second slate, no. Third slate, no. And eventually 28th slate, 27, 26, 27, and 28. Bing, bong, bing. Right? And then I go 20 slates of, the next slate, 2 weeks from now, I'm going to make the same types of lineups. And that may be the slate where the 250% on fighters both win and score 120 points. Right? And the cheap value play that's 34% owned, he gets a first round KO. And then I'm sitting there going, okay, well, on to next week. Like I'm not gonna have any of these types of lineups. And then someone in first place, maybe first place ends up with only being a 27-way tie. And it's $100K to first. So that's like, everyone gets $12,000 maybe. And then everyone will be tweeting out screenshots of, look at me. Me and all my 26 friends got $12,000. And I'm sitting there going, yeah, you over if you replayed this 10,000 times, you would have broken even. So there's really nothing. Yeah, 12,000 is not. I'd rather have that lineup than the lineups I had, but in the long run, I'm just going to make more money in those instances. So you could do that in any sport, and that's why you could learn those types of concepts in the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass. It's me and James McCool. So if you want all of this in kind of like a structured education, so you don't have to pick bits and pieces out of the pregame show and my content and everything, it's like going to a seminar for 15 hours. Doesn't matter what sport you played. This applies to everything. Game objectives, player selection, expected value, leverage, correlation, construction, risk management, exploits, psychology. Do you want to learn how to build plus EV lineups and how to think like a professional DFS player? This 15-hour audio masterclass. You could just listen like a podcast. You listen to it and you listen, you play. You listen, you play. That's exactly how I learned how to play poker well. I read a lot of books, the 2+2 books, and I'd read and then I'd go play. And then 2 days later, I'd read another book and then go play. And then I'd reread, 2 weeks later, I reread the same book that I just read. It's like, am I, because I see it being executed. Go, okay, I understand this concept. Let me see if I could do it in real time at the table and think of all the variables and everything. And you're doing things slowly in the beginning, right? Things are coming to you like, okay, I need to think this and then that. So your process is a little bit longer. But after you do, and then you read, you do, and then you listen, right? You watch this show. And then eventually you get to the point where, a year later, you're like, oh, that process that I had to think through for 40 minutes is like, it's like almost instinctual to you. You could look at a slate and when the span of 5 minutes go, yeah, I could see where I could find this and do, I could see where all these go. Maybe not like to the detail of exactly who, but you could look at a slate and go, this team's going to be under-owned, that team's going to be over-owned, this type of lineup construction. People are going to pay up at shortstop. They're going to pay down here. They're going to, okay, you could start visualizing in your head like what these chalk lineups look like. And then once you can identify that, it's like, okay, how could I be different from this? Like if everyone's going to do this, how do I do that? And then that starts coming to you really quickly. And then now you could start hand building and you could build 5 lineups, like no problem. Like, 10 minutes, I can build 5+ EV lineups, no problem. And then you go, okay, give me 10 minutes, I can do 10 of those lineups. And then you get to the point where it's like, oh, I get the scope of how to build these types of lineups. Now I'm going to use a tool like Lineup HQ, like an optimizer, and I'm going to build 20, 30, 50, 100, 150, right? I'm going to take advantage of my skill by doubling down, by giving me another plus EV lineup and another plus EV lineup and another plus EV lineup. And then you play, and over the course of a long period, those graphs, right? They trend upwards, but it's down, big, down, big, big, down, big, big, down, big, big. And eventually, there you go. It's not hard. I started with $400 in my account. So it's like, we're not talking about, you need money in order to make money. It's exponential growth, right? You turn 400 into 4,000, which makes it easier to turn 4,000 into 40,000. And 40,000 is much easier to turn into 400,000. You got to start somewhere. So I'm not special or anything. These aren't, I didn't make up these concepts. This is game theory. I'm just communicating, right? Just like Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't invent physics. He's just a science communicator. Anything else in the YouTube chat before we get out of here? Ready for soccer this weekend? Yes. EPL is back on Saturday. Maybe I'll mention something on maybe Friday because we have no MMA on. They're off this week, so maybe I'll show you a little EPL English Premier League stuff on Friday for the opening weekend slate for English soccer. M99 for Cop, Gatto, and Morales were core for you. Yes, if you take a look at my exposures, my top exposed fighters, like 30% or more, is like up here. So I Cop, highest Gatto, and Morales at 34. I had a lot of that. I targeted fights primarily, right? So I had a lot of Rodriguez and Morales. I had a lot of Gatto and Leonardo. I had a lot of Menefield and Herman. I had a lot of Munoz and Simmons. I didn't have much Ode Osborne with my Manuel Cop. So really, it's kind of like I want to make as many combinations with these fights because I believe, based on what I'm looking at in my spreadsheet, that the winning scores of these winning fighters are more likely to be 100-plus point optimal type scores, and they're being underowned. The fight as a whole is being underowned by some extent. Jason Kurtz. So if I'm playing a 5-man less owned stack, how important is it to play less chalky pitchers? Or do I already have the leverage I need? Yeah, you may already do. It depends on the size of the contest. So if you're playing a large field contest, you need more leverage. If you're playing a small field contest, you need less leverage. So in a small field contest, if you play one of the lowest owned stacks, like the rest of your lineup is just jamming the chalk. They're jamming the best projections from there. You're already different enough to beat 300 entries. That's good enough. Like fading the top owned pitcher. There's going to be a pitcher that's going to be 65% owned, and you're playing a 300-man contest, and you're just like, I'm just not going to play that guy. Like that may be good enough for that contest. It's just not playing them. Maybe fine. In a large field, you may need more. A large field, 30,000, 40,000 entries, 50,000 entries. Maybe you need a little bit more. But it depends on how low owned the stack is, and it depends on what the ownership of the entire lineup is. Right? So it's a matter of what all 10 look together. So it's quite possible to still play a less chalky pitcher if you want to play a more like if you're pulling a 5-man stack that's low owned, and you play the chalky pitcher, and this is large field, maybe that 3-man is another low owned. But let's say you don't play the chalky pitcher, then you can play the chalk 3-man, right? Let's say like the Yankees today. You go like, oh, the Yankees are going to be over-owned. Yeah, but if you play 2 low-owned pitchers and a low-owned stack, you could play you could play Judge Stanton, Odor 3-man, Voit or whatever 3-man in that lineup. But that 3-man in another lineup may be awful, maybe too chalky, but you have a good shot at min cashing with that lineup, but probably not a great shot at winning first. That's what lineups, not players, means. So you could make a plus EV lineup with nearly any player in the player pool. Even the worst player, just that the 5 other people have to have enough projection and leverage to make up for it. And it may still be plus EV, depending on the contest that you're in. So go to theoryofdfs.com. Check that out if you want the course. We got crunch. I think it's a free crunch time. Tonight's weird tonight, right? Because we got FanDuel not having the early game, but DK having the early game. I believe it's 5:45. I believe. You'll see the thumbnail. You'll see the thumbnail on YouTube. 5:45 tonight for crunch time with Roth and I think Cheese or Cards or someone. People will be on later today. So hit that thumbs up on your way out the door. Check out the video on the YouTube channel if you want a much more detailed look into my MMA DFS process. Check that out. Like that video, right? Share it with your friends. Share it on Twitter. Whatever you can do. Give me those thumbs up for the apple juice. Subscribe if you're new here. Notification bell. Hit that notification bell to know when we go live, because this is what I do, right? I know we didn't have James today, but this is the type of show that I do every day. We review stuff, baseball, basketball, MMA, whatever it is. It's the DFS pregame show. So yeah, this is what I do. So if you like it, come back every Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern for the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.